He walked into a 64-story skyscraper, wearing a faded, cheap jacket, holding the small hand of his 6-year-old daughter. For over an hour, multi-millionaire executives pointed at his worn-out shoes and publicly humiliated him, calling him a pathetic, desperate beggar. They laughed in his daughter's face until she burst into tears. What those corrupt executives didn't know was that this wasn't an applicant. This was Dante Mercer, the missing billionaire owner of the entire empire, and in less than 10 minutes, he was about to sign an executive order to strip them of everything and throw them into the street. The morning in downtown San Francisco came in cold and silver. The Mercer Meridian Tower rose 64 floors into the gray sky, its glass face reflecting the early light. Inside the massive marble lobby, executives in tailored suits strutted across polished floors, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit them. A man in an old charcoal coat stepped through the revolving door. He was 29-year-old Dante Mercer, broad-shouldered, carrying a worn leather folder and holding the tiny hand of his 6-year-old daughter, Matilda. Matilda clutched a pale blue cardigan and a faded stuffed rabbit, the exact same plushie her mother had given her in the hospital before she passed away. Matilda looked up at the massive silver letters on the lobby wall. "Daddy, is this the company Mommy used to talk about?" Dante paused, his chest tightening. He hadn't stepped foot in this building in 5 long years. He simply squeezed her hand and walked to the front desk. Behind the counter sat Constance Whitaker, a 58-year-old receptionist who had been there since day one. The moment she recognized Dante, her hands froze over her keyboard. But she kept quiet. She knew that when a man like Dante Mercer walks back into his own company incognito, he has a damn good reason. Dante checked in under a fake name, claiming he was there for an entry-level interview. He wanted to sit in the lobby like an ordinary citizen and witness firsthand how his company treated regular human beings. Minutes turned into hours. Arrogant corporate workers walked right past them without a glance. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. An hour passed. No one offered them water. No one asked if the little girl was hungry. When Matilda accidentally dropped a few cracker crumbs on the floor, an executive assistant scoffed loudly, "This isn't a daycare." Dante didn't raise his voice. He simply knelt down and picked up the crumbs with his bare hands. Inside the glass-walled conference room, top executives were looking down at the lobby. Callista Reed, the 28-year-old acting chief executive, sat at the head of the table in a sharp cream dress. Next to her was Zane Caldwell, a ruthless, arrogant VP. Zane looked down at Dante through the glass and smirked. "Look at that desperate loser on the bench," Zane mocked loudly. "Another jobless single dad who thinks putting on a cheap suit makes him an executive." The board members burst into laughter. Little Matilda heard the cruel snickers. She lowered her head, crying quietly while burying her face into her stuffed rabbit. Dante didn't flinch, but his knuckles turned white as he gripped his leather folder. 10 years ago, this billion-dollar tower didn't exist. There was only a dusty rented garage in Denver. Dante, an engineering genius, was working alongside his brilliant wife Rosalind and his best friend, Henry Lawson. They weren't building technology for money. They were building clean emergency energy grids to keep lights on in rural public hospitals, disaster zones, and underfunded schools. When they were bankrupt and on the verge of eviction, Rosalind sold her own car just so they could afford parts for their prototype. Mercer Meridian grew into a multi-billion-dollar empire, making Dante a young billionaire. But then, tragedy struck. Rosalind passed away after a sudden medical complication. Just 1 year later, his best friend Henry was killed in a fatal laboratory testing accident. Shattered by double grief, Dante handed over daily operations to corporate executives like Oliver Blackwell and Zane Caldwell. He walked away from public life for 5 years to raise his motherless daughter Matilda in peace. To the business world, he was the vanished billionaire. To Matilda, he was just a loving dad who braided her hair and cooked dinner. The night before coming to the lobby, Dante had received an encrypted, anonymous email. The subject line read, "They are selling what Rosalind died believing in." Attached were secret corporate documents leaked by Archie Bennett, an honest low-level financial analyst. Dante discovered a horrific truth. Oliver Blackwell and Zane Caldwell were secretly orchestrating a hostile buyout with Black Ridge Energy, a corrupt fossil fuel conglomerate. They were intentionally sabotaging Mercer Meridian's stock value so Black Ridge could buy the company for a 40% discount. Once sold, Black Ridge planned to shut down all hospital backup energy projects, fire hundreds of devoted engineers, and bury the clean energy patents forever. In exchange, Oliver Blackwell was getting a secret $95 million offshore payout, while Zane was promised a lucrative board seat. Dante didn't call the police or alert the media. He put on his old coat, the same coat he wore when he pitched his first design, and took Matilda to San Francisco to reclaim his legacy. Back in the lobby, Zane Caldwell stepped out of the conference room and strutted toward Dante. "You're the interview candidate?" Zane sneered. "Let me give you some advice. If you want a future here, don't bring your annoying kid to a real corporate office, and don't wear a suit from a dumpster. My daddy's suit is not ugly." Little Matilda sobbed. Zane laughed in her face. Callista Reed walked out and cold-heartedly called security. "Escort this man out immediately." Dante knelt down, looked into his weeping daughter's eyes, and kissed her forehead. "Stay with Miss Constance, sweetheart. Daddy is not going to let this place become your worst memory." As security guards moved in, Dante reached into his coat and pulled out a sleek, solid black metal card, the founder's charter master key. The head guard's face turned ghost white. He instantly backed off. Dante kicked open the boardroom doors and walked straight to the empty chair at the head of the conference table. Oliver Blackwell stood up, ready to scream until his eyes met Dante's. Oliver's blood ran cold. "Dante?" Dante dropped the black metal card onto the table right beside the illegal buyout contract. "Dante, Mercer. Founder, majority shareholder." "I sat outside that door for an hour," Dante said, his voice echoing like thunder across the room. "Long enough to realize that this company hasn't just been sold, it's been rotted from the inside out." What followed took exactly 6 minutes. Minute 1, Dante verified his master authority code. Oliver tried to argue Dante had been gone too long, but Dante cut him down. "I don't need an office to know when my life's work is being betrayed." Minute 2, Dante exposed the 40% fraudulent undervaluation contract with Black Ridge Energy. Minute 3, Dante threw down the offshore bank records showing Oliver's $95 million bribe. When a corrupt board director tried to sneak out the door, Dante barked, "Sit down. Your name is on page 14. Minute 4, Dante confronted Zane about cutting hospital emergency budgets. Zane screamed, "You abandoned this company." Dante looked him dead in the eye. "I left to raise my daughter after burying her mother. You stayed to sell out everything her mother died for. Never confuse the two." Minute 5, Dante showed Callista how Oliver had used her forged electronic signatures to frame her as the fall person. Callista's hands began to shake as she realized she was just a pawn. Minute 6, Dante pulled out the founder's emergency reinstatement clause, signed it using his late wife's silver pen, and slapped termination notices on the table. "Oliver Blackwell, Zane Caldwell, you are fired." Effective immediately, armed security officers marched in, not to arrest Dante, but to throw Oliver and Zane out of the building in cuffs. As Zane was dragged past the lobby, little Matilda watched him walk away in shame. Callista immediately turned against the remaining board members, freezing the Black Ridge transaction and surrendering total control back to Dante. The next morning, Dante stood before thousands of global employees in his worn charcoal coat. He restored the research division, funded the hospital energy projects, promoted the whistleblower Archie Bennett, and brought integrity back to Mercer Meridian. Weeks later, Dante brought Matilda back to the lobby waiting bench. "Daddy, why are we sitting here again?" she asked. Dante wrapped his arm around her. "Because I want you to remember this place. Not so you hate anyone, but so you learn one important thing. When other people fail to see your worth, you must never forget it yourself." Callista walked up, knelt down in front of Matilda with tears in her eyes, and said, "I didn't protect you last time. I am so sorry." Little Matilda smiled softly and touched her stuffed rabbit to Callista's hand, a sign of pure, gentle forgiveness. Hand in hand, Dante, Matilda, and Callista walked into the elevator together as the doors closed, ascending to the top floor not as victims, but as protectors of truth, family, and honor. Thank you so much for watching today's story. If this video touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Solo Dad Stories for more touching tales about family, dignity, and second chances. Let us know in the comments below which moment stayed with you the most. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.